Nike, the Grameen Bank, Tetra Pak, CEMEX, BHP Billiton. What do all of these successful businesses have in common? They all help to alleviate poverty through profitable partnerships. By focusing on the BOP in Bangladesh, Vietnam, Indonesia, Mexico, and Mozambique, they were able to help locals in poor living conditions by either providing jobs, microloans, or education on skills they would never have had the chance to acquire. But why should we expand our businesses to other parts of the world when we have unemployment and poverty here in the US? In these other parts of the world, there are roughly 4 billion people who live on less than $2 a day, who are more eager to work than most people here in the United States. To these people, work isn't simply defined as doing a job and collecting a check and going on with the rest of your day. It is an opportunity for survival for them and their ailing families. Imagine having one employee so dedicated to your company because it is providing the help they would need for them and their families to not only live better lives, but to just simply live. Now imagine having an entire workforce with that same dedication. Interesting prospect, isn't it? This diagram represents the economic period of our world today. At the top of the pyramid, you have a total of 75 to 100 million people that accounts for about 40% of the world's total net worth. At the base of the pyramid is an untapped and eager workforce of 1.5 to 4 billion people who are living on $1 to $2 a day. Through globalization, we can change the look of this pyramid into a diamond shape, representing that these people in the bottom of the pyramid are rising to a more sustainable life in the middle of the pyramid. With a larger middle in this pyramid, it will create more consumers for the business's products, a more educated workforce in developing nations, and a stronger global economy overall. A great example of the expansion of this pyramid is the outsourcing of jobs to India and China, which has helped greatly with the BOP in these countries. So to reiterate, businesses establishing themselves in the BOP market can provide growth for their company by having a highly productive workforce, increasing the reputation of their company, and also helping the poor and expanding into a new market. It will also help provide better living conditions for the poor in these countries in which they expand to. If success isn't what drives a business to expand to the BOP, think about what could happen if no business would expand whatsoever. War, famine, mass deaths, disease, all of these terrible things would impact these ailing countries and eventually spread to ours. With NGOs and the local governments, we can help the BOP through profitable partnerships while also protecting from the threats it could cause if left ignored. So what do we have to do as businesses to direct our riders, motivate our elephants, and put us on the beneficial path to success in the BOP? 4 things have to be incorporated into our mental mindsets. First thing, we need to establish systems thinking. Second, create deep dialogue. Third, develop moral imagination. And finally, change our mental models. And to start, we're going to talk about establishing systems thinking.
Complex systems can be observed almost everywhere you look. Some examples of these systems are trees, animals, organizations, and even you. Our bodies are wonderful, integrated, interconnected, and self-sustaining complexities that are made up of functioning parts such as the heart, liver, lungs, stomach, and so on. You can separate these organs, but if you remove everything but the heart, your body is no longer functional. In order to work properly, the body must have all parts working together. This type of systems thinking approach is exactly the kind of strategy that businesses should put into practice when addressing poverty. As a business, one must recognize that no business phenomenon can be studied meaningfully in isolation from its networks and other relationships. In addition, there are 3 worthy reasons why a business should adopt a systems thinking approach when considering global poverty. The first is the overall well-being of the internal and external stakeholders. In order to maximize the company's potential, the business must take into account the actions and choices it makes that affects its stakeholders. Using a multiple perspective method is a way to implement this very important step in systems thinking. A multiple perspective can be engaged by accessing the mindset of each group of stakeholders from their own point of view. A second good reason for adopting the systems approach is that it brings into focus the responsibilities and rights of its stakeholders. By implementing this step, the business satisfies the stakeholders, which in turn will satisfy the poverty problem in the long run. Third, a systems approach forces each of us and each institution to consider its multiple relationships. Because we are all affected by even remote events, this perspective serves the need of the individual while encouraging that individual to also consider a sustainable global economy. Tetra Pak is a Swedish multi-million-dollar global company that develops, manufactures, and markets systems for processing, packaging, and distributing food. They are the world's leading supplier of aseptic carton packaging for milk, soups, fruit juices, and etc. By relying on systems thinking, Tetra Pak entered a new market in Indonesia. They created partnerships with NGOs and local government to regularly provide fresh aseptic packages of milk to government-funded school feeding programs. These partnerships resulted in providing much-needed fresh milk to schools, gained insight in the rural culture in Indonesia, and opened up a new market for Tetra Pak's products. Moreover, the Indonesian children's health was significantly improved, and it also provided Tetra Pak to profile itself as an industry leader. Without thinking systematically about the well-being of all its stakeholders, Tetra Pak might have approached the situation with the traditional Western industrial perspective, thus missing the market altogether. Currently, we are faced with a number of ecological, economic, and social problems. Sustainable systems thinking is crucial for understanding and addressing these problems. Today, by adopting a systems approach, I encourage you to consider some of the ideas presented and to take a page from Tetra Pak's book. We can jumpstart the effort to alleviate global poverty by starting locally.
The next strategy used to alleviate poverty is through deep dialogue. Deep dialogue is developing different forms of communication best suited for the potential stakeholders. The main focus of this idea is to undergo profound change in the way that we think by experiencing unfamiliar situations firsthand. In the efforts to help alleviate poverty, deep dialogue means to physically venture to poverty-stricken communities and live as they do. This type of communication is a well-developed and very important skill for businesses, but is even more critical for those involved in the BOP. Many businesses consider the poor to be invisible and are often overlooked, but by utilizing deep dialogue, a business can acquire useful data that had been previously unknown and otherwise unattainable. By successfully learning and understanding how people live in different cultures, can result in new partnerships and a greater appreciation for those less fortunate. It is also an important strategy in increasing trust as well as determining their interests and needs of the surrounding community. An example of how deep dialogue can benefit your business is Mohammed Yunus's Grameen Bank, or Village Bank, of Bangladesh. Social entrepreneur Yunus had a dream of reducing poverty by giving the poor access to the social business world that holds the potential to empower them to become self-sufficient. To do so, he knew it would benefit his research to engage in deep dialogue. In his travels to Jabra, a small village near Bangladesh, he tells the struggle of a young lady named Mafia Khatun. Mafia was married by her father and sent to live with her husband's family at 13. She had 3 miscarriages due to malnutrition and anemia before giving birth to 3 children. After many years of verbal and physical abuse and being semi-starved by her husband and his family, the village elder arranged a divorce. Mafia was finally free but very poor. She received no help from her former husband and was reduced to begging on the streets to feed herself and her children. She did, however, attempt to make and sell bamboo chairs as a source of income, but doing so meant taking out loans to buy the bamboo, and because she was a woman, her interest rates were around 200%, so any profit made by selling her chairs went to paying her interest rates. It was then that Yunus discovered how exclusive the formal banking system is. After his deep dialogue experience, Yunus decided to create a micro-lending bank that allowed poor men and women to take out loans without the repercussions of a commercial bank. The Bank of Bangladesh thought he was crazy for lending money to people, especially women, with no collateral. After trial and error, the Grameen Bank acquired enough data to support Yunus's trust in micro-lending to the poor. The Grameen Bank is a for-profit venture. It's never lost any money. To ensure repayment, the bank uses a system of solidarity groups. These small, informal groups apply together for loans, and its members act as co-sponsors of repayment and support one another's efforts at economic self-advancement. Grameen Bank is owned by the borrowers and is based on trust. It does not require any collateral from its borrowers. And because Muhammad Yunus's bravery to jump into such venture, Mafia began to receive microloans for the Grameen Bank and was then able to provide 2 meals a day, clothing, and shelter for her and her family.
Moral imagination can be defined as a necessary ingredient of responsible moral judgment. This entails the ability to discover, evaluate, and act upon possibilities not merely determined by a particular circumstance or limited by mental models. In other words, moral imagination is thinking outside the box about how we think about businesses and poverty. It is envisioning new possibilities and acting on those possibilities. Businesses have achieved success and gained profits by using moral imagination. By thinking of the poor as untapped resources and potential new markets, they have taken advantage of unsaturated markets. In doing so, not only are they making a profit, but also they're helping alleviate poverty around the world. Activating moral imagination requires at least 3 commitments. 1. Disengaging from the context. 2. Delving into possibilities. And 3. Focusing on consequences. An example is the Cemex company in Mexico. Cemex is a global manufacturer of cement and other building materials. Between 2005 and 2007, the use of cement had tripled, and Cemex was presented with a great opportunity to reach new untapped markets. By using more imagination, Cemex was able to increase their stock price by 55% and reported profits of $1.5 million in just 2 years. Cemex is anticipating expansions into Colombia, Venezuela, Egypt, the Philippines, and many other countries in need. Cemex created the Patrimonio Hoy, which stands for Building Today for a Better Future. The program offers financing to low-income families. These are households that earn less than $5 per day. With this financing, they can build or expand on their homes. Customers were required to participate in savings groups, and in return, they were offered technical assistance, educational programs, and guaranteed quality products and delivery. As we can see, Cemex implemented moral imagination to come up with ways to empower the poor and so they can help themselves, and in doing so, they're making a profit. Cemex earned a foothold in markets that were previously unexplored. These markets become critical as the markets at the top of the pyramid become saturated.
The term mental model or mindset follows from the idea that human functioning does not merely result from passively forming mental pictures of our experiences, representations that are derived from the stimuli to which we are subject. Rather, our minds actively interact with the data of our experiences, selectively filtering and framing that data. These frameworks or mental models are socially learned schemata that set up parameters through which our experiences are organized. Thus, mental models function as selective filters for dealing with experience. To explain this definition in a more basic and direct form, it can be expressed as a set or fixed way of thinking about a particular idea. We develop or acquire these mental models from the influences of society, which can also be called socialization and other experiences. Within the process of framing, organizing, altering, and establishing these mental models, we leave out data because we cannot mentally process all that we experience. Therefore, the resulting mindset or mental model is incomplete and sometimes distorted, narrow, and often turn into biased ways of perceiving, organizing, and learning. But on the other hand, because they are not completely fixed mindsets, they can be changed. And that leads me to my next point, which is, what is the importance of held mental models within its relationship to alleviating poverty? Well, we all know that in order to help alleviate poverty, that those who attempt to do so must believe in particular possibilities that are available to alleviate poverty. This means that, for example, if it is possible to alleviate poverty through profitable partnerships with the poor, those who seek to help must believe that the poor are willing to work and that it will be possible to engage in profitable partnerships. Another example is a story about a bank called the Children's Development Bank. This story is about how young children in India were able to successfully organize a bank being responsible for their own and others' finances. This example represents the skills, abilities, awareness, and motivation that the poor possess that those with particular mental models are unable to recognize. The main point is that having an open mind to the possibilities of what the poor can do can encourage those with certain mental mindsets to act in a way that entertains the possibilities, therefore creating a healthy, stable, and thriving endeavor with the poor. Though it is not an obligation to figure out ways to help the poor, it may be suitable and beneficial as a financial opportunity.